After 3 years of marriage, her husband always treated her coldly and even said that she was not worthy to have his child. She loves him deeply, so she has been enduring it. Until Bai Yueguang showed off his diamond ring and pregnant belly on his social media account, it seemed like a good thing was about to happen. sMansion was angry, threw out the divorce agreement and demanded that the property be divided, not a penny less. Hua Jinghua sneered coldly, "If you want to leave, you can leave with a clean body." When sMansion left without any attachment, Hua Jinghua panicked and searched the world frantically for his wife. Encountering her again, she already had a new lover by her side. The arrogant Hua Jinghua threw her onto the bed and begged for reconciliation with red eyes. "Wife, all my property belongs to you, and I am also yours. Are you compatible with Chapter 1? You are listening at novelfull.audio. In front of the huge French window, 2 figures were intertwined hotly, and it was vaguely visible that the tall body of the man could not stop rising and falling. In the darkness, the low growls of men and the whimpering of women like cats intertwined, and ambiguity filled the entire room. sMansion doesn't know if it's because she deliberately wore a sexy lace camisole dress today, or because Hua Jinghua was on a business trip for a while and was very angry. Tonight, he embraced her with an extremely lingering force. It gave her a feeling that he was deeply in love with her. After finishing, he seemed to be in a good mood and even carried her to the bathroom to play with the mandarin ducks before returning to bed. Hua Jinghua did not leave directly as usual, and sMansion suddenly showed courage. She turned over and half lay on his chest. "My husband, we've been married for 3 years, and my grandfather said we should have a child," he said as he unconsciously circled his fingers and opened his mouth. The man gently stroked her back and stopped his hand. He lowered his gaze at her, a rare touch of tenderness disappearing from his black eyes, replaced by his usual indifference and ridicule. "sMansion, do you deserve it?" Simple 3 words, instantly shatter the illusion of a room full of passionate honey words. It will also completely break the surface peace that has been maintained over the past 3 years. Hua Jinghua pushed her away, put on his nightgown, tied his belt, and stood by the bed, looking down at her from a high position. Jun Rong is cold and his eyes are disgusted. "If you want to keep Mrs. Hua's position, just be calm and don't play with your vulgar methods anymore." sMansion's face turned cold as she spoke in amazement. "Is it unsettling for me to have a child with my lawful husband? I'm free to do whatever you usually want, but I'll say it one last time. I won't have a child. You should die this heart." Putting down this sentence, the man coldly slammed the door and left. sMansion lay quietly in bed, motionless. She opened her eyes wide and looked at the ceiling until her eyes became sour before closing them. The answer is expected, but the heart never dies before the Yellow River. Even if you know it's self-deprecating, you still have to ask. In a moment, sMansion regained some strength, picked up her phone, and lit up the screen. Above is a fresh headline news released this morning. Renowned pianist Jiang Xinruo and her mysterious boyfriend are in the hospital's obstetrics and gynecology department. The next day, she shares her oversized diamond ring on social media. Suspected to be pregnant, good news is approaching. On the side picture, there is a silhouette of the mysterious boyfriend's figure. sMansion stared at the silhouette with a smile on her lips, but her eyes gradually became moist. It turned into ashes, and she could recognize it. This figure belonged to her husband Hua Jinghua. He doesn't want children, he just doesn't want her children because he has someone else to love. Mrs. Hua also snatched this position from her. sMansion's parents passed away in an accident when she was 10 years old. Later, she was adopted by her uncle, who treated her extremely well and treated her as if she were her own. 3 years ago, my uncle's investment failed, and the company's capital turnover was poor, on the brink of bankruptcy. My uncle lost £10 in half a month, and my aunt talked a lot every day. At a loss, Grandpa Hua came to propose marriage. He and Grandpa Shang were once comrades in arms and had a deep friendship. As long as you marry the Hua family, all problems will be easily solved. Under the silent pleading gaze of her uncle, Shang Manue nodded and married. However, when obtaining the certificate, Hua Jinghua did not appear, the wedding was not held, and even the wedding night. He did not come back. Later on, it was discovered that he had already had a beloved Jiang Xinro, who was said to have proposed at that time. It's just that Grandpa Hua didn't like it, so he used it to separate them. Everyone thought that she was driven by the wealth and power of the Hua family. Only she knows that she likes this man, Hua Jinghua. Unfortunately, after spending 3 years together day and night, she still couldn't keep his heart warm, while Jiang Xinro remained with him like a shadow. The next day, Shang Manue wore exquisite makeup and walked out of the master bedroom with her usual complexion. The nanny, Aunt Chen, walked towards her. She looked embarrassed, but she still handed the box in her hand to her and said, "Madam, sir said that there was no action taken last night. To avoid unnecessary trouble, let you eat this." This box of afterwards medicine was like a big hand, forcefully revealing the self-esteem she had worked hard to maintain. Aunt Chen seemed to see her figure swaying, but the next second she looked over, she stood straight and motionless. Then he quickly took the medicine, broke it out, put it directly into his mouth, swallowed it raw, and acted without hesitation, all in one go. "Is that okay?" As she left, Shang Manue's straight waist suddenly collapsed. She turned around and saw only decorated paintings hanging on the walls of her bedroom, which were very precious but didn't even have a simple wedding photo. She suddenly fell into a daze. Is there really any need to persist in this marriage? Chapter 2. I want to divorce you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 3 days later, at 10 o'clock in the evening. Shang Manue had just put down her phone and was preparing to feel drowsy when she heard a beep from Hua Jinghua. In 3 concise words. "Come pick me up. I also sent the address later. Hua Jinghua has a game tonight." He probably drank too much, and Shang Manue took him over several times before. Just a hint of surprise flashed in Shang Manue's eyes, it was really fresh. In the past, when they argued, every time she was trying to coax them, he would show great compassion and forgive her. This time she was holding her breath and didn't take any action, but he took the initiative to break the ice. After hesitating for a moment, Shang Manue still got up and changed her clothes to go. If anything goes wrong, there will always be demons. As expected, when the merchant entered the private room at the full moon, the lights suddenly went out, and the surroundings were pitch black, with no visible signs. She instinctively shouted, "Hua Jinghua." Someone suddenly hugged her from behind, with great strength. A strong smell of alcohol rushed in, and Shang Manue's hair stood upright in an instant. He's not Hua Jinghua. She struggled reflexively, unable to break free for a moment, and the unfamiliar man impatiently pressed against her neck, repulsion and nausea surging uncontrollably. "Get out of here." She tried to keep herself calm and scolded angrily, "I'm Hua Jinghua's wife. If you dare to touch me, my husband won't let you go." Most people are already scared to death when they hear this name. As a top-tier family, the Hua family is inviolable in Hong Kong. In the darkness, the stranger sneered and remained unmoved, continuing to tug at her pants. During the tug and tug, Shang Manue's hand touched something, grabbed it without hesitation, and turned around to fiercely hit the stranger's forehead. He howled and fell to the ground, unable to believe that the woman in front of him was the gentle, obedient, and submissive Mrs. Hua. Shang Manue kicked twice more and took the opportunity to open the door and run out. While running, shaking his hands, he took out his phone and long pressed the 1 button to dial Hua Jinghua's number. The sound of beeping is ringing in my ears. Before the full moon of Kush Shang heard Hua Jinghua answer, he first heard the conversation between the 2 subordinates in the smoking area. "The girl who just went in is really good looking. Her big long legs are at least 41 inches, and the boss has a lot of good fortune. That's Mrs. Hua, of course it's top-notch. Our boss has always been a good wife and has been coveting Mrs. Hua for a long time. This time, we are cooperating with Mrs. Hua to offer a 30% discount, just to have a spring break with her. Mr. Hua is so generous. Everyone in the circle doesn't know that Mr. Hua doesn't like this wife who was forced on him. She has been hiding in the Golden House for a long time, and there's only one excuse to kick her. It's good to help correct his true love. No wonder that person is not afraid of her, warning. sMansion froze in place, with an incandescent light shining down from above, her face turning pale. Hua Jinghua has not answered the phone. The cool night of late autumn is not as cold as the full moon of Shang. She sat on the stone steps outside, stubbornly fighting over and over again for several hours until the battery was almost depleted before the other side connected. The man's voice was clearly deep and pleasant, but his tone was full of impatience. What's going on? sMansion still held a glimmer of luxury in her heart, wanting to ask what was going on tonight. You. On the other end of the phone, a gentle voice was inserted, Jinghua. The words of sMansion came to an abrupt end. It is obvious that he gave her to his partner for resource exchange, while he himself was spending spring snacks with the mistress. The heart wall, already riddled with wounds and holes, has completely collapsed. sMansion sneered at herself, no longer suppressing her anger and letting it fill her chest. She sneered, Hua Jinghua, your hobby is very unique. You like to be a green-haired turtle. I wish you all the best in the future and wish you happiness every day as a father. sMansion. Hua Jinghua's voice sounded somewhat distorted. At this moment, sMansion finally made up her mind that she didn't want to spend time with him anymore. She paused word by word and said clearly, let me inform you, son of a bitch, I want to divorce you and divide your wealth by half. Chapter 3. Shamelessness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At 2 o'clock in the morning, while Jiang Yuan was sleeping soundly, he heard a knock on the door. It's so late, who will come knocking on her door? Jiang Yuan left the room, took out his baseball bat, tiptoed to the door, opened his cat's eye, and looked outside. Suddenly, the heart beats faster. The next moment, she suddenly opened the door and looked at sMansion, who was in an extremely disheveled state outside. She widened her eyes in surprise and said, You. Were you robbed? Or. I was dreaming. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes were disheveled, and there were faint dried blood stains on her pants. She was like a fierce ghost who came to seek her life at noon and night. sMansion lifted her hair smartly and smiled, Sisters, please accept. It's already half an hour since she came out of the bathroom. Jiang Yuan handed her the milk, and when she received it, she sat on the small sofa, took a sip of the red wine, and looked at her visibly swollen eyes. She asked, Did you argue with Jinghua again? sMansion held warm milk in her hand, but her back still felt chills. As she calmly recounted what had happened tonight, Jiang Yuan stood up like a firecracker being lit up. What? Jinghua brother did something worse than a beast. Is he still a man? He couldn't help but raise his voice a few degrees. How much water in the Atlantic does this brain have to be soaked in to green oneself? sMansion tugged at the corner of her lips, it goes without saying. Jiang Yuan once again turned her gaze to sMansion. No wonder she was so embarrassed tonight. Since marrying into the Hua family, in order to please the people of the Hua family and save face for Hua Jinghua, she has always maintained a gentle and elegant image of Mrs. Hua outside. She won't be caught in the slightest bit of ugliness. Jiang Yuan angrily scolded, Dead scumbag, you bastard. If it weren't for you saving him in the countryside back then, he would have been cold long ago. The grass on the grave was even taller than him, but when he turned around, he forgot about you and only thought about that little mistress in his heart. Jiang Xinro is even more shameless. Even though she knows that a scumbag is a married man, she still sticks like a dog's skin ointment. I have never seen such a shameless person in the world. With her words, sMansion couldn't help but remember the first time she saw Hua Jinghua. Everyone thought they first met after engagement, but in reality, it was even earlier. After her parents passed away, she felt depressed and stayed at her grandmother's house in the countryside for a period of time during the holiday. At that time, Hua Jingbo was also recovering there due to his poor heart. By chance, she saved his life and he said he would always remember her. So when Mr. Hua came to propose marriage, she thought that was also his intention. Married to him for the past 3 years, reality has harshly slapped her countless times. When Xiang Manue regained her senses, she heard Jiang Yuan scolding more and more vigorously. She tilted her head, feeling amused. The relationship between the Hua and Jiang families is very close. Mrs. Jiang is recognized as the goddaughter by Mr. Hua, so Jiang Yuan is Hua Jinghua's godsister. She has also complained to Jiang Yuan countless times about Hua Jinghua and Jiang Xinro. Jiang Yuan has some reservations and rarely scolds so severely. Full moon, are you being angry and foolish? Can you still laugh? Xiang Manue shook her head. After a while, she let out a faint sentence, I'm not angry anymore. She sat on the steps, the cold night breeze blowing haphazardly on her face, and her love brain also blew away. Jiang wished for a moment of silence. She sat down, drank the red wine in one gulp, lightly licked her lips, and asked with uncertainty, so? Are you really going to divorce Jinghua? Are you willing to give up like this? Are you willing to take advantage of Jiang Xinro, the third son with no bottom line? Xiang Manue chuckled softly and murmured, in everyone's hearts, I am the third son between them. But soon she shrugged nonchalantly, I've been a licking dog for 3 years, and everyone's waiting to see when I'll be kicked out of court. It's better for me to take the initiative. Jiang Xinro loves to pick up my second-hand goods, let her pick them up. There are so many men. Hua family. In the early morning, Hua Jinghua entered the room with a chill all over his body. Aunt Chen greeted him, took his coat, and asked, Sir, what would you like to prepare for breakfast? Hua Jinghua has been on a business trip for a week and has been flying for almost 10 hours. His temples are slightly swollen and he doesn't have much appetite. No need, he said. He changed his shoes and walked in, glanced at the empty restaurant and said calmly, Where's Madam? She hasn't woken up yet. Madam is not at home, said Aunt Chen with a strange expression. Hua Jinghua furrowed his brows almost imperceptibly before returning to calmness. She left so early. No, my wife hasn't come back for a week. The man's handsome face was instantly covered in frost. Here, Xiang Manue has been living in a drunken and dreamy state for a week. Married to Hua Jinghua for the past 3 years, in order to please him, she forcibly changed her preferences to accommodate him. In order to cooperate with his schedule, she goes to bed and wakes up early, and can also have breakfast with him. He can't eat spicy food and the taste is relatively mild, but she enjoys it all. However, in the past 3 years, she has hardly eaten spicy food. Furthermore, he only reads English original works when reading books, and his daily entertainment is either attending art exhibitions, listening to operas, or engaging in various sports. Extremely self-disciplined, like the kind of AI with well-defined programs. But she is a great commoner, she has no sense of the above out-of-touch life. She doesn't sleep until the moon sleeps, likes to stay up late to watch dramas, read novels, and has fried chicken in her left hand and beer in her right hand. Occasionally invite 3 to 5 friends to go shopping, bouncing around and having fun. Last night, I played almost all night again, and Xiang Manue felt like she had only closed her eyes for a while before her phone rang non-stop. She pressed it off, making a noise, pressing it off again, making a noise. When she answered the phone, she was full of resentment and said, Who is it? Make it impossible for people to sleep anymore. Where is it? The man's voice was mixed with the cold ice of Antarctica. Even through his phone, it could make people feel a chill coming. Chapter 4. Are you annoyed? You are listening at novel full.audio. Due to a hangover, Xiang Manue's mind was still full of slurry and her reaction was slow. Before she could speak, the other side coldly questioned, "As Mrs. Hua, I haven't been at home for a week and haven't even spoken a word. You've grown your skills, Xiang Manue." In one sentence, Xiang Manue was completely awakened. She tugged at the corner of her lips and said lightly, "After 3 years of marriage, you often don't stay at home, haven't you ever given me an explanation?" Mr. Hua. Although the tone is light, it is full of sarcasm. It seemed unexpected that she would retort, but Hua Jinghua fell silent. Xiang Manue took a sip from the water glass on the counter and moistened her throat before continuing, "Besides, I have already filed for divorce with you. I don't need to explain my whereabouts to you, my ex-husband." Divorce. Hua Jinghua sneered instantly, "Xiang Manue, have you had enough trouble? Before, you had trouble every 6 months and every 3 months. Now that you have one menstrual cycle, are you annoyed?" "I'm not annoyed," Xiang Manue said expressionlessly. "If you're annoyed, just casually divorce me. Once we're apart, we'll never bother you again." In the past 3 years, she was afraid of doing anything wrong, afraid that Hua Jinghua would not want her. She never expected that one day, she could calmly propose a divorce. "Xiang Manue, did you intentionally do it?" Hua Jinghua's voice was filled with uncontrollable anger, "Intentionally picking on Grandpa to argue with me when he's coming back." After handing over the company to Hua Jinghua, Mr. Hua started his retirement life and went to Australia last year. He said he really liked it and basically settled there. "Why did you suddenly come back? I didn't hear him on the last phone call." No wonder Hua Jinghua took the initiative to call her today. It turned out he was worried about his grandfather, otherwise he wouldn't have cared where she went. In Hua Jinghua's eyes, her silence was a tacit agreement. He had a handsome face and a cold voice, "Xiang Manue, how much money do you want this time? Or what project has your good uncle set his sights on?" Xiang Manue's long eyelashes trembled fiercely, and her heart was suffocated. She married him because of money, so in his eyes, whatever she does is for the sake of profit. She suddenly lost her desire to argue, and even chuckled lightly, "Whatever you think, let me know when you have confirmed the time to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau, there's no need to contact me for anything else." Listening to the beep of hanging up in his ear, Hua Jinghua's face turned ugly. He called again, but there was a cold prompt sound. "The number you dialed is not in the service area." Aunt Chen had been standing beside her all along, and naturally heard her. She was secretly surprised that the wife of the usually angry daughter-in-law had actually blacklisted her husband. Suddenly, feeling a chill in her back, she suddenly looked up and met the man's frosty eyes, trembling all over. She immediately covered her ears and her desire for survival erupted, "Sir, I didn't hear anything." After speaking, she bowed and turned to work. However, in the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Hua Jinghua standing in place for a few seconds, then took out something from his pocket and threw it heavily into the trash can. With a loud bang, her heart shrank slightly in fear. After he strode upstairs, Aunt Chen stepped forward and picked up a very textured jewelry box. Upon opening it, she saw an antique diamond necklace inside. "Isn't this the necklace that the wife kept pestering the husband for, but he refused?" Xiang Manue threw away her phone and fell asleep again. After a while, she sat up again and cursed, "No, he's sick, isn't he?" Intentionally calling early in the morning to cause trouble for her. Jiang Yuan, who was sleeping on the other side of the bed, was awakened by the commotion, as if she was not accustomed to her tough side and was stunned. Xiang Manue winked at her, lifted her long hair and said with a smile, "Your sisters, am I particularly handsome?" Jiang Yuan couldn't tell that she was hiding her discomfort, but she didn't expose it and just gave her a thumbs up. Just the next moment, she frowned again and said, "Full moon, if you really get divorced, what are your plans next? After all, you have to spend a lot of money every month. Isn't it?" Chapter 5. Originally, Mr. Hua couldn't do it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The implication is that if you get divorced, you won't be able to enjoy all the benefits of Mrs. Hua's identity. Beautiful clothes, bags, jewelry, and unlimited secondary cards. You wouldn't think I would be so aloof and divorce the female protagonist in the novel, wouldn't you? sMansion has taken this issue into consideration. Over the past 3 years, she has been dignified and dedicated to being Hua Jinghua's wife and the daughter-in-law of the Hua family. Although Hua Jinghua doesn't like her, it doesn't prevent the dog from sleeping with her. They are a true couple. She takes care of her husband internally, is filial to her in-laws, and has always maintained his face externally. And the reason for this divorce is still his infidelity within the marriage, even having illegitimate children. It was she who chose to withdraw and fulfill their love for the dog couple. As long as she wanted to divide his wealth, it was already the end of her life. After divorce, she can immediately be promoted to the Forbes list of female billionaires. When she is rich, beautiful, and idle, she no longer needs to serve stinky men. How much to worry about in the second half of her life? After listening, Yuan also woke up in an instant. This time, he gave her a heartfelt thumbs up and said, "Sisters, the world is wide awake. It's my small pattern. Embrace your fists and say, strive for wealth and honor, don't forget each other." A future rich woman. sMansion sent the prepared divorce agreement to Huisher Group and Manua Bay respectively, where they lived after marriage. Ensure that Hua Jinghua can see it wherever he is. Hua Jinghua saw it in the company conference room. At that time, while in a meeting, his assistant Yang Gu accidentally caught it in a file and brought it in without paying attention to the projection. Therefore, all senior executives have seen this bold divorce agreement, which not only demands that all assets under Hua Jinghua's name be divided in half, but also specifies the reasons. After marriage, one foot tramples on two boats, hoping that the red flag at home will not fall, the colorful flags outside will float, and men will not love themselves, just like rotten cabbage. Moreover, the man is still unable to satisfy the woman in marital life. It has been 3 years since he was able to conceive a child, and there are 3 instances of unfilial behavior. Having no offspring is a big deal, and the man has committed 7 crimes and must leave. The senior management looked at each other, and then their caring eyes turned to Hua Jinghua. A big boss who has always been wise and powerful, it turns out he can't. No wonder they raised 3 children outside. The more they can't do it, the more they want to prove themselves. Yang Gu hurriedly turned off the projection and nervously glanced at Hua Jinghua. Looking at his handsome face as black as the bottom of a pot, still shivering with coldness all over, he thought to himself, it's over for him to play. Office of the President. Hua Jinghua sat on the swivel chair, staring coldly at the divorce agreement for a while, then suddenly sneered and threw it aside. This woman's variety is really increasing. Yang Ji's face was full of question marks. Although my wife has indeed caused quite a few divorces before, at most she was just bickering. This is still the first time I have formally given a divorce agreement like this. Maybe, it's serious, right? He whispered tentatively, Mr. Hua, is there a possibility that Mrs. really wants a divorce? Impossible. Hua Jinghua's voice was cold, but he was resolute and confident. Yang Gu thought for a moment and realized how much his wife's love for Mr. Hua had been over the past 3 years, which was evident to everyone. In the words of Mr. Hua when he was young, just like how his wife is obsessed with Mr. Hua, like a nanny, like a dog's skin ointment, even if there are no edges on the mountain and heaven and earth are united, they will not cut off from you. He was about to go out when he suddenly thought of something and stopped walking. Mr. Hua, there were many people and a lot of gossip at the meeting. Do you need to go and beat everyone up to stop spreading rumors about your wife's divorce outside? Once it is leaked, it is easy to trigger many speculations from the outside world about the Huisher Group, and even cause fluctuations in the stock price. Yang Gu thought he was quite thoughtful, but his big boss said without hesitation, there's no need to explain this nonsense. Let's go out. sMansion waited and waited for several days without receiving a response from Hua Jinghua. She had no choice but to remove him from the blacklist and proactively called him. It just rang out and then hung up over there. She patiently called again, and also hung up in a second. She gritted her teeth and tried to persuade herself not to see the same thing as the dog. After getting divorced and earning money, she hired a navy to sing him down online. Just as I was about to call back, my phone rang first. sMansion raised her eyebrows, and suddenly a dog's conscience grew. Chapter 6. Appetite grows every time. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon seeing the caller ID, sMansion's hand clenched lightly before pressing the answer button. Hello, Uncle. Full moon, do you have time? How about having dinner together tonight? Fan has always had a warm and gentle tone. Your aunt recently moved to a bustling temple and asked for a fertility talisman for you. She said it was particularly effective and reminded me to bring it to you. There are also some miscellaneous supplements that are beneficial for fertility. She is going to divorce Jinghua, and she doesn't need any fertility symbols or supplements. Drinking them in recent years has made her mouth bitter and astringent, making her feel nauseous when she hears them. Seeking God and worshipping Buddha cannot withstand Jinghua's strict defense. Before obtaining the divorce certificate, sMansion did not want to see Fan. If she wanted to divorce, he would definitely not agree, and she was not confident that she would not waver in front of him. It's best to execute first and report later. She pondered on what excuse to pass, and Fan added, Full moon, don't worry, I won't let your aunt come this time, so that she won't talk recklessly and make you uncomfortable. Just talk to our nephew and we haven't seen each other for a long time. Having said that, sMansion didn't want to agree and could only agree, okay. Fan's kindness towards her upbringing is always remembered by her, and in her heart, it is no different from her own father. After regaining her senses, sMansion called Jinghua again, but the phone was turned off over there. She put down her phone and passionately insulted the dog for half an hour, only to stop being dry-tongued. At 8 p.m., sMansion arrived at the hotel private room. In order to prevent Fan from seeing anything wrong, she went to the beauty salon in the afternoon for skin management, put on makeup, had a hairstyle, and dressed up for the appointment. Just like every meeting, she wants to show that she's doing well and not letting him worry. Unexpectedly, when she pushed open the door and walked in, besides Fan, there was also Jinghua sitting in the main seat with a dog-like appearance. Her good uncle obviously has been trying to please him, with a smiling face that flatters like an ancient eunuch. Jinghua's black eyes turned coldly towards her, and he looked up and down at her a few times, with an undisguised mockery in his eyes. It's like saying, he's talking about getting divorced, but he's asking his uncle to drink and dress up so coquettishly to seduce him. sMansion tried her best to ignore him and turned her head to look at Fan. She maintained a smiling face, bouncing out word by word, Uncle, didn't we agree that only our uncle and nephew would chat? Why is he there too? Fan naturally replied, Jinghua is your husband, not an outsider. Why do you still see him outside? He is rarely available today, so I invited him over with me. Have rare free time. Previously, she couldn't even invite him to accompany her back to her mother's house for a meal, but now she's getting divorced but has time. Fan pointed to the seat on the other side of Jinghua and said, Come and take a seat. sMansion walked straight up to Fan and pulled out a chair to sit down. Jinghua gave her a cool glance, pursed his thin lips, and remained silent. Fan smiled awkwardly and couldn't pretend nothing had happened. The reason he organized this dinner party was, of course, because he heard the news that they were going to divorce. It was transmitted from the high-level group in the conference room. At first, he didn't believe it, but now seeing is believing. He gave sMansion several winks and made her dress up. She lowered her head to look at her newly made nails, but remained silent. He cleared his voice and said with a compensated smile, Jinghua, the full moon has been spoiled by me since I was young. It's inevitable that she's a bit arrogant. She's just trying to get divorced this time and wants you to take her seriously. Don't be angry, I'll compensate you for it." As he spoke, he raised his glass and was about to drink it all in one gulp. The wine glass in his hand was suddenly taken away, and as he looked up, he saw sMansion's extremely embarrassed expression. Why bother apologizing to a dog who has been unfaithful to his marriage? She held back for more than 10 seconds, but ultimately only lowered her glass heavily and said, "Uncle, I'm not feeling well today. Let's go first." Full moon. Despite Qing Qianfan's shout, sMansion walked away with high heels and did not return. From beginning to end, he didn't even give Hua Jinghua an extra look. Just a few steps out of the private room, her wrist tightened and in the next moment, she was heavily pressed against the wall of the hallway with a force. The wall lamp shone down, and the man's handsome face was magnificent. At this moment, Kushang's full moon only wants to smash his dog head and dog thing. Knowing that she cares about her uncle, she deliberately told him about the divorce to disgust her, right? Before she could take any action, Hua Jinghua's cold and indifferent voice fell from the top of his head, "Your uncle just mentioned to me that he wants to participate in a new project of the group. The S+ project of Huisher Group aims to establish a fully AI-oriented commercial district. The future profits are considerable, so he wants to take a share of the pie." Upon hearing this, sMansion felt an ominous premonition rising in her heart. As expected, the dog's voice grew colder and thinner, mixed with endless mockery. "That's why you insist on getting divorced this time, right? No wonder it's a divorce agreement, running away from home, and going to nightclubs every day to indulge in pleasure. Don't give up until you achieve your goals, right? sMansion, your and your good uncle's appetite is getting stronger and stronger each time. I can give it, but you're not afraid to hold on to it." sMansion's face turned pale. Upon seeing this, Hua Jinghua thought she finally realized she was wrong. His anger calmed down a bit, and he lightly stroked her delicate face with his big palm. He kissed her lips and said in a hoarse voice, "Stop making trouble, come back with me, okay?" Chapter 7. Don't even think about it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the next moment, sMansion suddenly regained consciousness and fiercely pushed him away. "I want to divorce you, it's not because of this." Hua Jinghua's handsome face suddenly turned black like the bottom of a pot. "Okay, it's not because of money, what's that?" sMansion's eyelashes trembled fiercely, and the most regretful thing she had done in the past 3 years was that she had put in a lot of effort but couldn't let him take another look at her when she listened to Jiang Yuan's advice. She patted her chest and assured her that with her understanding of her own godbrother, being gentle and virtuous would not take him down, so she would go the opposite way. Spend his money hard, ask for things from him hard, and a man's money will be spent on whoever he thinks of. During that period, sMansion had no choice but to follow suit one by one, only buying expensive items and not the right ones. He pestered him every day to buy, and his secondary card was also expected to be obtained at that time. However, for a wealthy person, he doesn't care about the little money she spends and doesn't earn as quickly as he does. In the end, not only did he fail to catch his attention, but he also added a stain to himself. He usually doesn't mention it, but when it comes to arguing, this matter will be exposed and become a weapon to attack her, a reason for her insatiable greed. After getting married, her uncle and aunt were not without insinuating to her and asking Hua Jinghua to help her family. She politely declined, saying she didn't understand the business world and didn't ask him anything. She is his wife, and there is no need to feel guilty about spending his money, but when it comes to the interests of the Hohot Group, she still has a face. However, he still pinned these charges on her head. sMansion's lips turned white, and her lips wriggled to explain something. Suddenly, she laughed at herself again. "There's nothing to say." Hua Jinghua let out a cold snort from his nose, looking as though he had already known. He let go of her and slowly tidied up his cuffs, regaining his calm and benevolent tone. I can promise to participate in the stock market. I'll go home tonight, and I won't be allowed to go to any nightclubs again. What do you look like wearing those clothes with bare chests and exposed breasts? Do you remember your Mrs. Hua? In the afternoon, Yang Gu reported on her whereabouts over the past few days, and when he saw the photos that were more and more out of place, the veins on his forehead couldn't stop twitching. Grandpa's 70th birthday is coming soon. Do you want him to be pointed at and angered at the birthday banquet? Mr. Hua. sMansion met his black eyes and spoke with a calmer tone than ever before. Whether you and your uncle should cooperate or not is up to you. I don't understand or participate in your business matters, he said. She lowered her head and took out her wallet from her bag, took out the secondary card inside, and handed it directly to him. Take this back, and all the things you've bought for me in the past few years are in the villa. I haven't taken any with me. Hua Jinghua lowered his eyes and his gaze fell on the card, his face turning cold again. What do you mean? His voice became stiff. Isn't it obvious yet? I don't want all the things you gave me, I just need to divorce you. sMansion didn't think it was enough, so he added, didn't I say I'm insatiable? That's right, you're right. After getting divorced, I'll buy everything new. I don't want anything old. Including this old man. Hua Jinghua's anger rubbed against the ground and was stirred up again, unable to suppress it. He coldly said, sMansion, have I been too tolerant of you lately? sMansion still smiled and replied with a strange tone, Mr. Hua, did you not pass the elementary school Chinese test? Do I deserve you to use the word tolerance? No matter what she does here, she is not worthy. Those who are favored have confidence and fearlessness. She is the one who is annoyed. Hua Jinghua's black eyes rolled with anger, almost gritting his teeth. You've been causing so much trouble, but ultimately, you still want a child, right? He thought for a moment, and her abnormality began that night. Child. sMansion fell silent for a moment, but instead asked in reverse, what's going on? I changed my mind, and I'm eligible to have your child again. As expected. The man's eyes were tinged with thick annoyance and he said without hesitation, don't even think about it. My patience is limited. I can give you the project for the last time. Take back what you said and apologize to me. Let's forget about this matter. The implication is that he has given her all the steps, so don't be ignorant. If it had been before, sMansion didn't need him to give her steps at all. Without steps, she could jump down on her own, even if she fell and broke her head, bleeding. sMansion smiled with curved eyebrows and eyes, it seems that I still have to thank Mr. Hua for his magnanimity. She is good-looking, 7 parts pure and 3 parts seductive. She smiles like a little fox, very seductive. Hua Jinghua's eyes are slightly dark, and his Adam's apple unconsciously rolls down. Seeing her like this, Hua Jinghua's coldness also calmed down a bit. Just as she was about to speak, she heard sMansion say without blinking her eyes, Hua Jinghua, go have your dreams of spring and autumn. Apologizing is impossible. I will definitely divorce you after getting married. Half of your wealth must also be divided. What did he do to her in Chapter 8? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hua Jinghua's anger was completely ignited, and he was so handsome and gloomy that it almost dripped into the water. He pinched sMansion's chin with his big palm and forced her to look up at him. He laughed back in anger and spoke harshly, sMansion, are you crazy about money? Just rely on your laziness every day after getting married, lying at home as a young lady. You only know how to spend money recklessly and dare to speak up. Have you ever earned a penny? sMansion's hand suddenly tightened. He suddenly thought of something, his eyes mocking him to the extreme, and his words mixed with a gust of wind sweeping through him. So in such a hurry for divorce, are you preparing to go back and continue to cooperate with your good uncle, and then find a scapegoat to sell for a good price? sMansion was so angry that her chest heaved violently. She never expected his dog to spit out any good words, and never expected his cheap mouth to once again break her lower limit. Her eyes turned red and mist rose before her eyes, but when Hua Jinghua looked over, she curled her lips and smiled as if nothing had happened. "Mr. Hua, you wouldn't think that if you said that, I wouldn't want to divide the property, would you?" As she spoke, she suddenly thought of something, her eyes filled with coldness. "Since you can do that to me, half of it, I still feel like I'm losing a lot. If it weren't for her escaping that night, now she wouldn't be standing here talking to him about divorcing her clone family, but dying with him." Hua Jinghua furrowed his brows and his black eyes flashed inexplicably. What did he do to her? sMansion suddenly pulled open his hand forcefully and spoke confidently, "We didn't do property notarization before marriage. So from the moment you signed and married me, every penny you earned after marriage was half of mine. If you're not sure, I don't mind having my lawyer educate you on what marriage law is. Why doesn't she want it? If she doesn't want it, wouldn't she just leave it all to the mistress? Whoever loves to be this Virgin Mary, she shouldn't be the one." Hua Jinghua laughed angrily, his eyes turning red. He stared at her and fiercely pressed against his back teeth. "Okay, I'll see if you have the ability to take half of my wealth." Hua Jinghua strode away with a meteor, and sMansion stood against the wall for a while. After regaining some strength, she saw Qing Qianfan come out of the private room carrying a large and small bag. I don't know how much he has heard, but sMansion is too lazy to ask, waiting for him to speak first. Qing Qianfan, however, remained calm and didn't ask any questions. He simply said, "Let's go, uncle will take you back." On the way back to the apartment, Qing Qianfan's topics revolved around whether her body was healthy, how to eat those supplements, and how devout her aunt was when she went to beg for a son. Not mentioning anything just now, as if nothing had happened. Before getting off the car, sMansion couldn't help but ask, "Uncle, I want to divorce Hua Jinghua." Speaking of which, while she breathed a sigh of relief, she was also prepared to withstand the storm. Qing Qianfan didn't think much of it. "Every time you argue, you always say you want to divorce, but which time didn't you reconcile quickly? I see you shouldn't be able to last for 3 days this time. Alright, when you're angry, go coax your husband. No wonder Jinghua is so angry this time. You've made him lose face." sMansion was stunned fiercely. It wasn't because her uncle told her that the divorce agreement had been made public at the high-level meeting, which caused Hua Jinghua to lose face. However, it turned out that in this marriage, she was humble to the dust. "I have said so many times that I want to divorce, but then I rushed to beg him to reconcile. So when the wolf came and shouted too much, no one believed her words anymore. Uncle is, and Hua Jinghua is even more so." Apartments. Jiang Yuan flipped through the pile of precious supplements and exclaimed, "You aunt, you're only very enthusiastic about giving birth. She's usually stingy, but she's willing to spend a lot of money on these for you." As she spoke, she sneered, "However, it's also true that you can't bear to have a child without a wolf. Once you become pregnant with the heir of the Hua family, you will be able to ascend to heaven alone, and she will be able to own this big gold mine of the Hua family." sMansion tugged at the corner of her lips and remained silent. Jiang Yuan let out a dry laugh, as if only realizing that he had said the wrong thing. He immediately changed the topic and said, "You have offended Jinghua brother so much today. He may not easily agree to divorce. What are you planning to do next?" sMansion hugged the pillow and shrugged nonchalantly, "Of course. I'll continue to offend you until I see through." At 5:30 the next day, sMansion, awakened by 10 alarms, picked up her phone and dialed Hua Jinghua's number. His biological clock is very precise. No matter what time he goes to bed, he wakes up at 6:30 a.m., and he has severe waking up sickness. So when they answered the phone over there, their voice was low and irritable. "What's going on?" sMansion went straight to the topic, Mr. Hua, when will you go through the divorce procedures? Shang Full Moon, would you like to see what time it is now? Shang Manuel was not angry and hung up the phone directly. The next day at the same time, she called again with the same sentence. The man angrily retorted, do you want to go to the psychiatric department and register? On the third day, Shang Manuel was blacklisted again, and without saying a word, she changed her room landline. Shang Manuel, are you okay? Is it all over? Shang Manuel said, if you agree to divorce, it's over. 5 days later, the man answered the phone. Shang Manuel only said one word, and he interrupted her coldly, as if every word he said was about to bite her apart. Come to the company at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Shang Manuel suddenly smiled and said in a gentle voice, okay, dear, have a good sleep. Doodle doodle. Chapter 9. Criticism. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Shang Manuel hung up the phone, she also collapsed. This move harms 1,000 enemies and self-harms 800. If the dog doesn't let go, she probably won't be able to hold on anymore. Fortunately, her strength is perseverance. Once the matter is determined, we will do our best to do it to the end, without hitting the south wall or turning back. When chasing him, we will do it, and now we are going to divorce, and so on. Huisher Group, Conference Room. Shang Manuel stepped in on time, but did not see Hua Jinghua. Instead, he was a well-dressed lawyer named Shi, a personal lawyer appointed by Go Dongxi, and one of the top victorious generals in China. Madam, long time no see. Lawyer Shi stood up and greeted. He helped the glasses on the bridge of his nose and smiled gently, looking like a gentle gentleman. Shang Full Moon is very clear that he has nothing to do with gentlemen and is a ruthless character who eats people and doesn't spit out bones. Over the years, he has assisted the emperor in his tyranny, and I don't know how many sinister and destructive deeds he has done for Hua Jinghua. She gave a perfunctory smile and pulled out the chair to sit down. Where's Hua Jinghua? Haven't he come yet? Although a dog is a scumbag, he has a strong sense of time and won't be late himself. Of course, he also doesn't allow others to be late and fuss. Lawyer Shi sat opposite her and replied, regarding all matters related to divorce, Mr. Hua has fully entrusted me with representation. Madam, you can directly talk to me. Shang Manuel's face was mocking, and he really put in a lot of effort to prevent her from dividing his wealth. Okay, then let's talk about it, but I need to contact my lawyer first. A professional does professional work, so she won't go overboard and argue with a lawyer. Lawyer Shi made a gesture of resignation. The lawyer hired by Shang Manuel, surnamed Su, is a skilled divorcee in the industry. However, after less than 10 verbal battles with Lawyer Shi, he was defeated with a disheveled face. After Lawyer Shi gracefully withdrew, Lawyer Su explained to her in a concise manner. Miss Shang, Mr. Hua has rejected your 2 reasons for divorce. Firstly, he did not cheat, and secondly, your marital life is very harmonious, so he does not agree to divorce. The mistress is pregnant and hasn't cheated yet. Is it true that in the future, when the child is born, taking the 3rd son into the house will count? Shang Manuel was extremely angry. She laughed back angrily and said, then there's nothing to talk about. Please prepare and help me sue for divorce. Unexpectedly, Lawyer Su's words almost caused her to explode in place. Mr. Hua also said that your wild speculations and empty words cannot be used as evidence. Even if you sue for divorce, you will not be sentenced in court. If you don't stop and insist on getting a divorce, he's not unable to fulfill you either. In the eyes of Shang Manuel, who was about to burst into flames, Lawyer Su, under pressure, finished the remaining words one by one, you leave the house clean, and you also have to admit to the outside world that it is your own problem. Maintain the image of Mr. Hua well and not affect his second marriage. Shang Manuel clenched her fists, so angry that she only wanted to beat up the dog. Lawyer Su dutifully analyzed and advised, Miss Shang, there is indeed no evidence of infidelity on your end. Based on the current situation, if you insist on divorce, it would be best to communicate and negotiate with Mr. Hu again. Before finishing her sentence, sMansion suddenly stood up, opened the door to the conference room, and strode out. She couldn't help but say, "Miss Shang, where are you going?" "Find a dog to settle accounts with." When sMansion stormed into the CEO's office in anger, Hu Jinghua was sitting upright behind the spacious office, holding a video conference. She approached with a noble and cold face, slammed her laptop shut, and interrupted the meeting. The man lifted his eyelids and his gaze fell on her, cold and heavy. "sMansion, do you know what you're doing?" sMansion's voice was even colder than his. "Hu Jinghua, you don't like me. Is it interesting to delay divorce?" Hu Jinghua stared at her with cold black eyes and suddenly smiled, pulling a hint of mockery from the corner of his lips. He leaned back in the chair, his long legs elegantly overlapping. "Quite interesting," he said. sMansion naturally wouldn't think that he was reluctant to divorce her. He just didn't want to easily fulfill her wish, and even wanted to humiliate and torture her, letting her know that this marriage game wasn't about starting or ending as she wanted. sMansion's fingertips trembled and she said, "Hu Jinghua, how much money do you have and can't afford it?" I don't know which word stabbed him, but Hu Jinghua's anger was instantly stirred up, his thin lips lifted lightly, and his words were extremely harsh. "Aren't you just interested in my stinky money, eating and wearing mine, and living on it? Without my stinky money, you and your good uncle's family wouldn't know where they drowned in that stinky ditch. Are you still thinking about my stinky money now that you're getting divorced? sMansion, I have tolerated you enough. If you feel better, just accept it. Otherwise, you won't get anything in the end." sMansion's face turned pale as she bit her lower lip, almost bleeding. She knew from beginning to end that he looked down on her, but she didn't expect that in his eyes, she was just a disgusting leech attached to him, crazily sucking blood. In order to get closer to him, all her efforts for love, he only saw a clown working hard on stage to perform a play that was insatiable, relentless, and extremely comical. Seeing her not speaking, Hu Jinghua lifted the lid of his laptop again and his tone of voice softened a bit. "Go back and reflect on yourself, I will." A glass of water splashed towards him, and the man's words came to a sudden halt. Chapter 10. Clean out of household. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hot water dripped down Hu Jinghua's cheeks, and his fair skin turned slightly red. The man's handsome face was extremely gloomy, and he stood up suddenly, staring at sMansion. His eyes were rolling with waves, and the temperature around him dropped to freezing point with lightning speed. sMansion looked at him with a rare and unyielding expression. She straightened her waist, choked her neck, and except for a slight redness in her eyes, her aura did not lose for a moment. "Hu Jinghua, I don't care about your stinky money anymore. I will draft a new divorce agreement and give it to you. If you are a man, you can sign it quickly. Let's go and get the divorce certificate. From now on, you can walk on your own wooden bridge, and I can walk on my sunny path. It's irrelevant." She placed the water glass heavily back on the table, disregarding Hu Jinghua's ironclad expression, holding her head high and chest high, and walking away on high heels without looking back. Behind him, Hu Jinghua's hands clenched little by little, and the veins on the back of his hands erupted one by one. 10 seconds later, the office door was suddenly pushed open again. Hu Jinghua didn't look up and sneered, "sMansion, it's too late for you to know your mistake now." However, he didn't wait for the humble apology of the full moon in the business, but rather a surprised voice that didn't mind the excitement. "Brother, did I see it right? Your quail daughter.in.law just now turned into a king of flowers and splashed water all over you, and she wants to divorce you. TSK, is this really a full moon in the Shang dynasty? Or was it because I didn't wake up from last night's drink?" He patted his forehead. Even though he had just hidden outside the door and watched the whole journey, he still couldn't believe his eyes. Hua Jinghua raised his eyes and looked coldly at the newcomer. The man has a handsome appearance, with a pair of peach blossom eyes that add a hint of indistinguishable beauty to him. His eyes are blurred, always with a deep and affectionate demeanor. He is Lu Jinan, the youngest son of Hua Jinghua, and the crown prince of the Lu group. Hua Jinghua drew a tissue to dry his face, vigorously kneaded it into a ball, and threw it into the trash can. He snorted coldly, "It's just playing hard to get." Lu Jinan rubbed his chin with a disapproving expression and said, "I don't think so. I've already started using it." Before the full moon of Shang, there was a divorce, and the biggest battle was to go back to her mother's house without saying a word. However, she only stayed for less than half a day. Seeing that Hua Jinghua had no intention of picking her up, she found an excuse and came back disheartened. "Where is it like this time?" "It's a divorce agreement, hiring a lawyer, and being straightforward." This performance directly pleased him. "What do you understand, a single dog? Beating is love, cursing is love, she's acting spoiled with me." Hua Jinghua corrected expressionlessly. Lu Jinan. Which woman acted coquettishly like this? As an experienced lover among wandering women, he keenly sensed the changes in Shang Manue's expression. When she splashed Hua Jinghua's water just now, her gaze was clearly filled with a strong murderous aura. He instinctively retorted, "No, I think so. Shang Manue is a real action this time." Before he could finish speaking, the man's cold gaze turned sideways. Lu Jinan's heart trembled and he automatically closed his mouth. Looking at his confident demeanor of, "I don't want you to think, I want me to think," Lu Jinan squinted his eyes and suddenly had a premonition that this dull and plain 3-year marriage was about to stir up waves. Hua Jinghua raised his eyes and saw Lu Jinan staring at him with an extremely lewd expression. He frowned and spoke calmly, "If you have something to say, get out of here." Based on the friendship of growing up in a pair of shorts, Lu Jinan wanted to ask him a few words, but didn't want to say anything. If he were to pursue his wife at the crematorium in the future, he would also deserve it. Lu Jinan straightened his face before speaking seriously, "Mr. James, whom you want to meet, will hold a private banquet in a week. I have received the invitation letter, but he has also invited your wife. After all, the divorce agreement given to you by Shang Manue recently has been widely circulated, and he must confirm it on his end. To engage in long-term strategic cooperation, marital stability is an important factor. That is to say, if you want to talk about cooperation, you need to first eliminate the negative impact of this divorce rumor." Lu Jinan nodded until the end, elegantly placing the invitation letter on the table, and walked out of the office with great credit and fame. As soon as he closed the door, he didn't hold back and burst out laughing. "It seems that he hasn't been worried or having fun lately. Damn it, how blind she was before, why did she just take a liking to such a dog thing? Apart from being good-looking and having a better figure, everything else is nothing." Shang Manue was full of anger, and the more she reviewed it, the more angry she became. She felt that she hadn't performed well, so she shouldn't have just poured him a glass of water. She should have smashed his stinky mouth with the cup. Her mood couldn't calm down, so she decided to go to the cinema and buy The Disappearing She. She watched it 3 times in a row, and after coming out, she finally felt calm and composed. When Jiang Yuan returned home at night, she saw Shang Manue sitting on the sofa with her phone and computer in her arms, her slender and tender white fingers typing rapidly on the keyboard, her expression very focused. Jiang Yuan was slightly taken aback. She is currently working at the Hua Group and had heard about her recent incident in the CEO's office, which led to a heated conflict with Hua Jinghua. She rushed back from work to comfort her, but was surprised to find her so calm. Is it calm before the storm? She put down her bag, took a few steps forward, opened the door and asked straightforwardly, "Full moon, what are you doing?" "The full moon of Shang keeps moving, doing business." Jiang Yuan widened his eyes and exclaimed in surprise, "No, do you really agree to leave the house with a clean body?"